Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Think about the last wedding you saw online, not the one you attended, the one you saw. The drone shot of the ballroom, the slow-motion first dance set to a string quartet cover of a pop song, the caption that read, "The best day of our lives," stamped with 40,000 hearts before the cake was even cut. Now think about someone you know, maybe a cousin, maybe a coworker, who got married last spring. You only found out 3 weeks later, over coffee, almost by accident. No album, no countdown, no hashtag, just a quiet, "Oh yeah, we got married in April," said the same way someone might mention they repainted a fence. We have a word for people like that. We call them private. Old-fashioned. Sometimes, if we're being unkind, we call them boring. We wonder, quietly, if something is wrong with them. Are they hiding something? Are they lonely? Is their life actually smaller than ours, and that's why there's nothing to show? Here is what almost nobody tells you. Neuroscience and psychology have been studying exactly these people. The ones who live full, rich, eventful lives and simply never announce them. And what researchers are finding is not a deficiency. It's the opposite. It may be one of the clearest markers of a settled, secure, high-functioning mind. So today, we're going to sit with the quiet ones, the ones who travel and don't post, the ones who fall in love and don't caption it, the ones who succeed and let the silence speak for them. By the end of this, I think you'll understand that their silence was never absence. It was architecture. It was something being built carefully out of view. And if you're one of them, if you've ever felt a flicker of shame for not documenting your life the way everyone else seems to, I want you to stay until the end. Because what I'm about to tell you might be the permission you've been quietly waiting for. A.T. Ancient wearing behend THESCSCROLL. Let's start with a question. Why does your stomach do that small flip when you check the number under a photo you just posted? That flip is not new. It's ancient. For most of human history, your survival depended on one thing above almost everything else, belonging to the group. If the tribe approved of you, you ate. You were protected. You were safe. If the tribe turned on you, you were exposed to the cold, to predators, to hunger. So evolution built us a very sensitive internal alarm system for social approval. When the tribe nodded at you, your brain rewarded you with a flood of dopamine and oxytocin, chemical messages that said, in effect, you belong here, you are safe. Social media didn't invent that system. It found it already wired into every human being on Earth and plugged straight into it. A like is not just a like. It is your ancient tribal approval circuitry being tapped gently and repeatedly by an app. This is how something as small as choosing a filter becomes an emotional event. You're not simply picking a photo. Somewhere underneath, an old part of your brain is asking, will the tribe accept this version of me? Psychologists have a name for what happens next, the performative self. You start living two lives at once, the one you're actually inside of and the one you're curating for an audience. Picture someone at a rooftop dinner in Lisbon, rearranging the plate 3 times so the light hits the pasta just right, letting it go cold while they search for the caption. They are no longer the person having dinner. They have become the director of a show about a person having dinner. Slowly, without meaning to, we hand our sense of worth over to an audience we can't even see. Our value stops being something we feel and becomes something we're waiting to be told. But here's where it gets interesting, because there is a group of people for whom this entire chemical loop barely fires at all. And it isn't because they're numb. It's because their approval system runs on a completely different circuit. THE compass that points INWARD. Psychologists describe this using a concept called locus of control, essentially where you locate the source of your own worth. People with an external locus of control look outward. Their sense of okayness depends on votes cast by other people, likes, comments, compliments, reactions. People with an internal locus of control carry their own compass. They decide, quietly and privately, whether something in their life was good. They don't need a head count to confirm it. Picture two people watching the same sunset from a beach in Zanzibar. One immediately opens their camera, angles for the best composition, posts it with a caption about gratitude, and spends the next 20 minutes checking who has responded. The other simply watches. Their nervous system releases the same feel-good chemistry, serotonin, oxytocin, but the trigger is the sunset itself, not an audience's reaction to a photo of the sunset. No extra steps, no waiting room for joy. There's real research behind this pattern. Studies out of relationship psychology have repeatedly found that people with high, stable self-esteem tend to share less about their romantic relationships publicly. Not because the relationship is weaker, but because it doesn't need outside proof to feel real to them. Think about the wealthiest people you've ever heard of who live modestly. The strongest people you know who never raise their voice. The happiest couples you know who you'd never guess were happy because they're too busy actually being happy to narrate it. When something is genuinely secure, it stops needing an announcement. For the quiet ones, silence isn't emptiness, it's containment. They are keeping the good stuff, the purest, most private parts of their joy. For themselves, instead of spending it in small public installments to strangers who will forget it in 4 seconds. Now, maybe you're thinking, but I don't post to show off. I post to remember. My page is basically my diary. That is a completely reasonable thing to believe. It's also, according to memory science, not quite true. And the truth is a little uncomfortable. THE, memory U, think U-E, SAVING. There's a well-documented phenomenon in cognitive psychology called the photo-taking impairment effect. In one influential study, researcher Linda Henkel brought 2 groups of visitors through a museum. One group was told to simply look at the artwork. The other was told to photograph it. The next day, when tested, the group that took photos remembered fewer details, described weaker emotional impressions, and made more factual errors than the group that had just looked with their eyes. Why would documenting something make you remember it worse? Because of something called cognitive offloading. Your brain is, frankly, an efficiency machine. It doesn't like doing work it thinks it can skip. The instant you raise a phone to capture a moment, your brain quietly registers. The device has this now. I don't need to. And it stops deeply encoding the memory. You end up with a sharp photograph and a blurry recollection. You remember taking the picture. You don't actually remember the moment. Now picture the people who don't post at a concert. Eyes closed, hands empty, not holding up 30 seconds of shaky footage nobody will ever rewatch, including them. They are living the concert at full resolution, the bass in their chest, the stranger singing off-key beside them, the exact temperature of the night air. No 6-inch screen stands between them and the experience. Nothing about that moment exists anywhere except inside them, which, as it turns out, is the only place a memory can actually be felt rather than merely stored. There's a term in existential philosophy for this: presence. The instant you start composing a shot, you step outside the experience and become its observer instead of its participant. You become the cameraman of your own life, watching from just behind the lens. People who never post have, often without realizing it, chosen to stay the main character instead, fully inside the scene, not framing it from the wings. And here's the strange gift of that choice. Time expands. When you're not managing a moment for an audience, that moment gets to be as long and as textured as it actually is. Their lives don't feel smaller for being undocumented. They feel longer. THEQSSK from THWATCHTOWER. Let's shift, for a moment, from psychology to power. Centuries ago, philosopher Jeremy Bentham designed a prison called the Panopticon, a circular building with a single guard tower at its center, positioned so that every inmate could be observed at any moment, but no inmate could ever tell when they were being watched. The genius and the horror of the design was that prisoners eventually stopped needing an actual guard. Just the possibility of being watched was enough to make them police their own behavior around the clock. A social media profile is a small, personal panopticon. You don't need anyone to actually be watching for the effect to work. The mere possibility that someone might see is enough to make you dress a little more carefully before you leave the house. Tidy the one corner of the room that's visible on a video call. Soften an opinion before you post it, just in case. Slowly, we become our own wardens, quietly disciplining ourselves to stay inside an invisible audience's expectations. The people who never post, or who keep their lives locked behind private accounts, have, often without even framing it this way, walked out of that tower. They've reclaimed the freedom to be inconsistent, to be unphotogenic, to wear the ugly, comfortable sweater in public, to have a strange hobby nobody would understand, to fail at something in private and simply try again without an audience keeping score. Hiding, in this sense, isn't cowardice. It's the room a person needs to actually grow, away from the pressure of a permanent audience. There's a second layer to this, too, an economic one. 10 years ago, having a huge following was a genuine marker of status. Today, when almost anyone can go viral for 15 minutes, visibility has become common, even cheap. Meanwhile, something else has quietly become the real luxury: privacy. The people with the most actual power, in old wealth, in deep expertise, in rooms you'll never see, tend to be the quietest online. Many of them understand a blunt truth of this century. If a platform is free, you are the product being sold. Every check-in, every photo, every status update is a small deposit of data, mined to study your behavior and sell your attention back to advertisers. People who don't post, whether by instinct or by choice, are opting out of being harvested. They're keeping something of themselves that isn't for sale. There's an old saying that a secret loses some of its power the moment it's told. Private happiness works the same way. The quiet, unshared parts of a life carry a kind of concentrated value. And every time we broadcast them to a crowd of near strangers, we dilute that value into something smaller: content. Disappearing from a feed isn't falling behind. It's stepping into a quieter room with no ads, no comparison, and no performance required. That isn't isolation. That's one of the highest forms of freedom available to a person today. FROM, FOMO 2O, JOM, FOMO. I want to be honest about the fear underneath all of this, because I think it's the real reason so many of us keep posting, even when it exhausts us. The fear is this: if I stop showing up online, will I disappear? Will people forget I exist? That fear has a name: FOMO, the fear of missing out. And underneath it is something psychologists would recognize as an anxious attachment pattern toward the group itself. A quiet, childlike worry that says, if I'm not visible, I'll be left behind. The quiet ones have made a different trade. Researchers sometimes call it JOMO, the joy of missing out, and it tends to sit on top of a more secure attachment style. It sounds like a calm, settled belief. I exist. I have value. And the people who actually matter to me already know it. They understand something the rest of us keep forgetting. Real relationships aren't maintained by likes. They're built in long phone calls, in showing up at someone's door during a hard week, in sharing an actual slice of cake with the actual person across the table from you, instead of a photo of it with 2,000 people who will scroll past in under a second. They also tend to be unusually free of something psychologists call the spotlight effect, the deeply human illusion that everyone is watching and judging our every move. We think if we wear something unfashionable, the whole world will notice. If we post a typo, everyone will remember it forever. Here is the strange, freeing truth. Almost no one is paying nearly as much attention to you as you think. Everyone else is the main character of their own story, too busy narrating their own life to spend more than a passing second on yours. The photo you agonized over for 40 minutes gets less than a second of anyone else's attention before their thumb moves on. Once you truly absorb that, it stops feeling sad. It starts feeling like relief. If no one is really watching that closely, you are finally, quietly, free to live however actually suits you, not however an algorithm has decided is aesthetic this week. So where does this leave us? Am I telling you to delete every app and disappear into the woods? No, not at all. Used with intention, these platforms can be genuinely wonderful for staying close to family overseas, for finding your people, for sharing real joy with those who've earned the right to see it. The problem was never the tool. The problem is when the tool starts driving you instead of the other way around. But if you're someone who rarely posts, who feels a quiet pressure to build some kind of personal brand online but privately dreads it, I want this to land as permission. You are not behind. You are not hiding something broken. Your silence was never boredom. It might be one of the sharpest forms of intelligence a person can develop in this century, knowing exactly what deserves to be shared and what deserves to be kept. Think of it like this. Most people are playing life in crowded multiplayer mode, constantly comparing their level to everyone else's, grinding for numbers that don't actually mean anything, buying the flashy skin just to be seen wearing it. You, the quiet one, have quietly switched into single-player story mode. The world looks sharper here because you're seeing it with your own eyes instead of through a filter. The story feels richer because you're feeling it with your actual heart without the constant hum of notifications pulling you out of the scene. The people beside you, your family, your closest friends, have real depth here, with none of the strange emotional delay that comes from a life lived through screens. And in this mode, there's no dislike button. There's no button at all. Just you, fully present, needing no one's applause to know that what just happened to you was real. You didn't vanish from the world. You simply logged off from the performance so you could finally be present for your own life. If any part of this found you tonight, tell me in the comments below. You don't need to explain. Just leave the word quiet so we know you're one of the ones out there living slower, deeper, and on your own terms. And if this is the kind of thing that speaks to you, stay close. There's more waiting for you here. More conversations like this one. More permission to become the calmest, most whole version of yourself. Subscribe so we don't lose each other in the noise. I am reclaiming my peace.